Hey friends, it's Ken Wimberly, and as we get ready to wrap up another year, 2025 is coming to a close, and I'm doing what I normally do at this time of year, which is a bit of reflecting. And certainly over the last 15 years, reading has become a really important part of my life. So I was reflecting recently on the books that I've read this year, the impact that those books have made in my life, the shifts that they've caused, and what I plan to do about it in the future. And I thought I'd share with you the top 5 books that I read this year and a little bit about what I loved about each of those books. And then I'd go ahead and share the rest of the books I read, and you can explore those on your own. And if you're someone who's trying to grow, lead, or raise great kids, I think you'll find value in here too. So let's get started with my top 5 books for 2025. And if you've watched some of these videos in the past, a lot of times I'll record them in my office, and you'll see behind me a stack of books next to my desk. These are the kind of the key books that I'm reading or getting ready to read. And so these were a lot of my 2025 books. And I'll start by sharing some of the top ones on my list. Many books I read on Audible, some I read in book format. Oftentimes I'll purchase both the Audible and the book format. But let's look back here. And these are in no particular order on my top 5, but we'll start with The Steady Leader by Schuyler Williamson. So Schuyler is my business partner in Laundry Love. I've known him for more than a decade now, and just respect him immensely as a human, as a father, as a leader of people. The book, The Steady Leader, is a very appropriate title if you know Schuyler. What I love about this book is the simple models and framework that Schuyler puts in this book. He's really one of the best that I know of reading many books and absorbing the different models, the systems, the way people that suggest things. He'll go adopt those things and immediately input into his business or his life or his parenting journey, whatever he's doing. And The Steady Leader is one of those books. So he takes many concepts from things that he's learned over the years, and this is from all the way back from his time in the U.S. Army. He was a airborne ranger in the U.S. Army, and talks a lot about his journey in the Army and as a young leader in the Army, and all the way through where he is currently. He talks about through his journey as a parent and a father, and how he's implemented those many things into his business. So highly recommend The Steady Leader. Pick up a copy of that book. There's for sure things you will get out of that book that you can implement into your life immediately. Next book on my list for 2025, and honestly, this might be the number 1 most impactful book for me of 2025, and that's Dying to Be Me by Anita Moorjani. This book was mentioned by a friend of mine who kind of casually mentioned it last year. You might check out this book, and I'd written it down and thought, yeah, I need to check that out. And at some point I had a few Audible credits, and I said, let me just download this book and listen to it. I don't know, maybe it's only 6 or 7 hours, so it wasn't that long on Audible. And wow, what an impact this book made. It was so powerful for me. I read it 3 times this year. I wanted to hear it again and again. And this book is deep on my spiritual list. So I'll read books for education, for parenting, for spirituality, for business concepts, for lots of different reasons. And as I explore my spiritual journey, this is one of those books that popped up on my list in the spiritual journey. Whoa, amazing. So the book follows Anita Moorjani through her life. She narrates it herself, tells the story. And she grew up in India as going to British schools. And anyway, fascinating book, but about the story of her life. But where it gets really fascinating is Anita got cancer I want to say maybe in her late 20s, early 30s. She got cancer, had cancer for multiple years, and it ended up getting really bad. And she had tumors all over her body, and cancer became terminal. And eventually she fell into a coma, ended up being rushed to the hospital, and then went through a very incredible NDE, near-death experience during that time, where she was basically passing over into the other realm. but she didn't fully pass over. She had a deep, deep spiritual experience, saw and felt and understood many, many things, and then chose to come back into her life. And when she came back, her body healed. It healed completely from cancer. I want to say within about 2 months. The doctors thought of it as quite miraculous. Never seen anything like that happen. And she's gone on to tell her story across the world. Dr. Wayne Dyer found out about her. They subsequently became friends, spoke on many stages together, and just an incredible, incredible story, wonderful book, wonderful journey that Anita went through. So that was probably my top book of the year. Again, I read it 3 times this year, so it was that impactful for me. Next for me, this is the most recent one I read, and that's The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. Another incredible book. Really like this one. My friend Ray Byatt recommended that book, and he said, Ken, this book is going to speak to you. I kind of felt like I knew what the book was about just from the title. I was like, yeah, I kind of get it. You're getting out of your comfort zone doing things. But man, I'm so glad Ray called me and pushed me to actually read the book. So I listened to this one on Audible as well. I can tell you on this one, I bought copies of this book for all of my kids and my bonus kids, so my kids' best friends. They'll be coming over this week to celebrate together as a family. I've got a copy of this book for each of them because it was really that important. So many concepts to learn in this book about, really, you don't think about how, I'll use the word comfort because he's got it in there, but how easy our life has become, certainly in historical concepts to what life has been like. We're very, very fortunate these days. And Mr. Easter highlights the importance of us pushing through the ease, doing hard things. There's a lot of research. I love how he wove his stories in between telling a personal journey of him going on this expedition, a 5-week hunting expedition in the Arctic and the Alaskan wilderness. And he wove the book between telling his own journey of pushing way out of his comfort zone to go on that expedition with some experts, and then all the clinical research that he did on a variety of different topics about just kind of where we are in our journey these days as humans in the modern society. So recommend that book, highly, highly recommend that book. Amazing one, and suggest you pick it up. Next on the list for 2025, Sahil Bloom, The 5 Types of Wealth. This was a real slow burn for me. It took me probably 3 months to read this book. I did this one not in Audible. I did it all in the hardcover book format, and I read this during my morning reading times. And honestly, I kind of went intentionally slow on it. It was such a good book. I absolutely loved it. The 5 Types of Wealth. Financial wealth is in there, but it's the last on his list of the 5 types of wealth. So he walks through the types of wealth that he finds important, and I'll tell you just so I don't mess this up. Throw my glasses on. So we talk about time wealth, social wealth, mental wealth, physical wealth, and financial wealth. And again, financial wealth is on the list, but it's last in his book. And really, I look at that as kind of the last of the important types of wealth. The others are so much more important, and frankly, we forget about the others until it's a problem, and then we remember them very clearly. But it's wonderfully written, uses, again, like Schuyler, Sahil brings in a lot of models and frameworks that he's learned from other places and puts them into a really, really well-written, well-told storybook on the 5 types of wealth. So if you're not following him on social, I'd suggest you follow Sahil. Schuyler too. If you follow Schuyler, you'll get a lot of snippets of his current books that he's reading. He writes stories each week on the lessons that he's learning from the books that he's reading and puts them out on social, and Sahil does a lot of that as well. So encourage you to follow both those guys. In the 5th book, I don't have in hard copy or paper book. I just read it on Audible. And it's one of those books that honestly was in my Audible for more than a year. I had heard multiple people talk about it in the past, and I was like, oh, I need to download that book. But it was so long. I want to say it's 19 hours on Audible, at least 14 hours. I'm thinking it was closer to 19 hours on Audible. And it just seemed like a really big mountain to climb. And so I never started it. But this year, like 3 people mentioned it over the course of a few weeks. And I said, all right, that's my cue. I need to start this book. And it just so happened that I had a long road trip to Florida and back. And so I said, well, that's some time, some windshield time. I was by myself, said this is going to be the book I start and read on the trip. Wow. What an amazing book. So Autobiography, Yogi, his name is Paramahansa Yogananda, is the author of the book. Wonderful book. Again, this was a book that hits my spiritual journey. And if you don't know the story or on this book, Steve Jobs, I believe, gave away copies of this book to everyone that attended his funeral. So it was it's so important in his life that he gave away copies of the book to everyone that came to his funeral. So anyway, I read the book. It was absolutely phenomenal. It's truly is the autobiography of this guy's life from childhood up through his death, and everything that he went through, that he learned, that he witnessed, that he saw, that he evolved into. He was a spiritual yogi, or became a spiritual yogi, over in India, and then eventually came to the States and brought yoga to the United States back in the 50s, I believe, and established different institutions in the United States. And he brought a different type of yoga. I typically think of yoga as kind of the stretching body type yoga. He brought more of a breathwork meditation type yoga over to the States, and very, very potent, very, very powerful type of yoga, and just a fascinating story. And when I got to the end of it, I thought, I could either look at that book and think this was a fantasy book with lots of wild, impossible things that occurred, or I could look at it as this was reality, and it's just not necessarily the reality that we normally see or choose to see each day. I chose to see the latter, that his story is that of reality, and it frankly deepened my spiritual faith even wider than it's been. So really recommend, if you've got a little bit of time on your hands, or if you got a long road trip, it's wonderfully narrated and just an incredible book. So those are my top 5 for the year. Now, I'll quickly kind of give you the others that I read for the year, and you can dive into those on your own. I'll just kind of show you the names and show you the titles, the book covers on those, and you can dive into those on your own. Reading is a key component for me. Encourage you to read at least 10 pages a day. If you read an average of 10 pages a day every single day, that will be about 12 to 15 books a year, just 10 pages a day. And then if you listen to Audible, layer some of that into there, you can get even to 15 or 20 books a year pretty easily. So for the other books of the year, here they are. The first book I read this year was A Quaker Book of Wisdom by Robert Lawrence Smith. After that, it was Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall. I love storytelling, so this is definitely one worth checking out. The next was a fiction book, and I'm not a big fiction book guy, but I read The Long Walk by Stephen King. It was actually written as Richard Bachman, one of his pseudonyms. But man, because I do a 24-hour walk each year, someone suggested that I read that book. Pretty fascinating, and interestingly enough, later in the year, they actually released a movie on The Long Walk, which definitely not for young kids, but a pretty fascinating story and interesting book. The next is The Tears of Things by Father Richard Rohr. This is one of many books I've read by Father Richard Rohr, and it was quite incredible. Recommend that one as well. The next, another fiction book, but kind of a prepper fiction book called 1 Second After by William R. Forstchen. This book was a little crazy. It's about what happens after an EMP, electromagnetic pulse attack in the United States. So I read this just a thought in preparation, if something happened like that, what would I want to do to be prepared? And my goodness, I left terrified, praying that nothing like that happened. The next book that didn't make the top 5 was Becoming Nobody by Ram Dass. Another deep dive in my spiritual journey. He was mentioned somewhere in one of the other books I read, so I dove into that. Next is Wishes Fulfilled by Dr. Wayne Dyer. Dr. Wayne Dyer read the foreword to Dying to Be Me. He was the person that got Anita Majori on the map with her book and got her all over the world stage. And she, of course, mentioned Wishes Fulfilled in that book. I read it. Incredible book. I was actually crying at the end of that book. The next, another one that I've heard for years was The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This one I read 2 times. I actually read Ram Dass's book 2 times and The Prophet 2 times. This is a short one. It's a short read. I have it in paper format, but I also have it on Audible, and the narration is absolutely incredible. So I encourage you to check that one out. Next book, What If This Is Heaven by Anita Moorjani. So it's a follow-up to Dying to Be Me. Also really liked this book. Dying to Be Me, I put way, way higher than this one, but it was a great book as well. Next, Endless Customers by Marcus Sheridan. This is the follow-up book to his book called They Ask You Answer, which I really loved. Endless Customers is just an extension of that book. And again, if you're diving into deep customer service, this is a book for you. Next is another book on my spiritual journey, The Ancient Secrets of a Master Healer by Clint Rogers. Another incredible book that I highly recommend, and another one of those that kind of has some fantastical, mystical things in it. Much like Autobiography of Yogi, you could choose to believe that these things do not really occur, or you can choose to believe that it absolutely is reality, which is my belief, and I'll be reading that book again next year. The next book is The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Michael Singer is also the author of The Untethered Soul, which had quite national fame. Well, I'll say I've tried to read The Untethered Soul several times and it just starts so slow. I have a hard time getting into that one. The Surrender Experiment, on the other hand, it pulled me right into the book. I loved it from start to finish. Highly recommend that book. The last book I read this year was Wooden on Leadership by John Wooden, the famed UCLA basketball coach. This was actually a reread for me. I've read this book 4 times now, and this year I just reread my Kindle highlights. Some of my books I read on Kindle, and I love to do that because you can highlight your key passages and then reread just those key passages. So incredible. If you are looking for a book on leadership, this is one of the greatest leadership books I've ever read. I plan to read it next year with our entire Laundry Love leadership team. So there it is, my 2025 books, what I read, what I loved. I really kind of pretty much loved them all. But there's my top 5 and what you can dive into. So thanks for sticking with me. Check some of those out. If you like what you hear here, if you want to get more information on parenting, systems for life, laundry hacks, doing hard things, etc., hit the like and subscribe button and follow me. And you can get notified when we release new things. So have a wonderful holiday season. I wish you many, many blessings in 2026. Thanks so much.